Alright everybody, it's time for yet another data pack review. Wow, it feels like I just did one of these. Anyway, you all know the drill. Let's jump right in. I mean, it's totally safe after all. It's not like there are any hugely powerful meta-warping combo cards in this pack or anything like that. No, it's none of that. So anyway, let's start this off with Excerpt. This is a new Anarch virus, yet another virus, as we've seen quite a few of those. It's a 2 to install, 3 influence, 1 MU, and it says when you access a card from R&D, access one additional card, trash it when the court purges virus counters. So in case the flavor text didn't make it obvious enough, this is clearly a fixed version of Medium, or as a lot of people might call it, a watered-down version of Medium. But let's be real, Medium was pretty ridiculous. So, and it's not terribly complicated. Like, it's R&D interface that costs less, takes up an MU, and disappears if the court purges it, which doesn't sound particularly useful, especially since, you know, a lot of us had so much time with things like R&D interface. The destroyed when it's purged thing really doesn't sound good. However, I think we all need to take a step back and remember a couple of things. One, this is going to go into a deck that really wants to force the corp into wasting turns by purging as much as possible. I think we can all agree that this is a reason to put Sacrificial Construct in an Anarch deck, because apparently Sacrificial Construct isn't in enough decks yet. But also, don't underestimate how powerful multi-access on a stick is. Like, by regular math, the average corp deck has, on average, 1 agenda every 5 cards. So if you just blind single access R&D, you have about a 20% chance of hitting an agenda. By accessing 2 cards instead of 1, that chance doubles, meaning you have a 40% chance to hit an agenda every time you hit R&D. With even something as mild as this out, you are practically coin flipping for an agenda every time you touch R&D. So even though this may not appeal to you right off the bat, I wouldn't count it out, especially in decks where, you know, you can put in more satcons and make the corp have to purge like 4 times to get rid of 1 copy of this. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see it everywhere, but I wouldn't count it out just yet. All right, after that is Crypt, which is a virtual hardware. At least that's what the spoilers say. I don't know. We'll see if that turns out to be true or not. But it's a 0-cost, 1 influence card. It says whenever you make a successful run on archives, you may place 1 virus counter on it. Click trash 3 hosted virus counters, search your stack for a virus program and install it, paying the cost, then shuffle your stack. And this one is not very good. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not very good. Like, remember Jin? Yeah, I mean, that's not a card anymore, but remember how many people use Jin, which did the same job of tutoring viruses, but way, way better than this. And still nobody played Jin, so yeah, I mean, the only deck I could possibly see this working in would be an Alice deck, because you want to run archives over and over again, but outside of that, like, yeah, the only way you're going to get real value out of this is if you can run archives repeatedly for some other value than putting counters on this, you know, or have some way to, like, just dump counters on this for free or something, because all by itself, it's like, why not just spend those clicks drawing or playing draw card effects? So, yeah, like this, not seeing a lot of use for this one. And that's it. There are no other Anarch cards this pack. Nope. Nothing to talk about. Nope, nothing. Nope, nothing to talk about. There's nothing here. Oh, God! Alright, everybody. We knew this was coming. This is Friday Chip. And in my opinion, this is about to flip the game on its head. So it's a 2-cost, 2 influence piece of hardware. Whenever you trash a corp card, you may place 1 virus counter on Friday Chip. When your turn begins, you may move 1 virus counter from Friday Chip to another virus program. And just in case you were wondering what all the hubbub is about, there's one card that breaks Friday Chip really badly. And so there might be some other combo out there that's relevant and viable and yada yada yada, but let's be real. Friday Chip is for Imp. Imp plus Friday Chip is ridiculous because Friday Chip plus Imp, I'm just going to call it Chimp from now on. Chip plus, I'm just going to call that Chimp. Chimp allows you to have infinite Imp counters because you trash something with Imp that puts a counter on Friday Chip, and then at the start of your next turn, you move the counter from Friday Chip back onto Imp. So you have at least one counter on Imp every single turn, and Imp is never dead. So I don't know how else to explain to you that infinite Imp counters is outrageously powerful, because infinite anything is really powerful, and blowing up your opponent's cards for free infinitely is like I don't really have to explain this, do I? Okay, so, well, I don't think anyone's going to argue with me at how powerful Chimp is, but I'm extra worried about it because there are two things in particular that I think this combo is going to do, and that's one, completely warp the meta, and two is make Edward Kim the new Anarch God. So that sounds a little over the top, and trust me, I'm trying really hard not to be hyperbolic here. I really am. But let me explain. So if there's one thing, if absolutely nothing else, there's one thing that this combo does, and that is completely invalidate asset spam. Like, now that this combo exists in the game, asset spam is dead. Like, dead, gone, finished, done, in its grave, and you can't do it. You can't play asset spam anymore, because what this combo does is every single turn the runner gets to trash an asset at 0 cost, because you just run it and imp it for no cost, and then next turn you get to run and imp something else. And I don't care how confident you are in your spamming of assets, there's no asset spam deck that can keep up with losing an asset at 0 cost to the runner every single turn. You can't keep up with that. And even if you purge to wipe the virus counters, that's the other busted thing about this combo, is even if you purge to stop it, all the runner has to do to start the combo back up again is trash anything through any other way. So like just pay to trash something normally, or use an ice destruction card, or use an ID ability like Edward Kim's or Freedom, who's coming up, or play Wanton Destruction, just any of that, and all of a sudden the combo's back online. So like asset spam just can't deal with that. It just can't. It's just, you automatically lose to any Anarch deck, because every Anarch deck will be running this combo. And what that does is, that means that all of a sudden, all these asset spam decks that relied on asset econ for their money, now all your econ cards are worthless, because they'll immediately evaporate as soon as you play them. So since all asset econ is worthless now, all the corps will be forced to shift focus to operation econ and IDs that give you money. So stuff like Polana and Corset Weiland will suddenly get a lot better. And because everyone is now relying on Operation Econ because of this combo, all of a sudden Edward Kim, who gets to trash operations for free, becomes really, really good. Not only because you get to blow up all the important econ cards that the corps are leaning on, but also because that's a completely free way to reset the combo after they purge, because you just use your ID ability. And let's not forget that the new Jackson Howard, aka Preemptive Action, is also an operation. That's just more reason to play him. Now, the only asset spam based deck that could possibly keep up against that is maybe CTM. but even then, like, you're just paying to remove the tag to blow up an asset every turn. You're not paying the regular cost, you're just paying to remove the tag. So even as CTM, your only real hope is to score that new enhanced security agenda as soon as humanly possible. Because if you got to remove 2 tags, then you're fine. But outside of that specific thing of play this one identity and score that specific agenda as soon as you can, then yeah, just no asset spam deck is even on the radar. But all you CTM players might be thinking, okay, I'm still safe from this then. But wait, there's more. Because guess what? Remember that one other little thing about Edward Kim? Oh yeah, he has Link. And it's pretty easy to stack Link right now. So if you can get a couple Link on Edward Kim, your ID ability is basically blank against CTM. So, like, yeah, your tag is trace based. So if you got Link, you don't get that either. So even if you score the tagging agenda, like, you're still only giving them 1 tag, and if you can't score that agenda, you're just not doing anything. Your ID is frickin' blank, and since there's going to be all these viruses flying around, wouldn't be surprised if Macrophage start and get it played again. And guess what? Macrophage is nothing but traces, and Edward Kim has Link. So, yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's be fair. Maybe I'm wrong. And it won't be as bad as I'm thinking it's going to be, but I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if Friday Chip ends up getting restricted the next time that MWL is updated, and I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if Edward Kim becomes the new Wizard for the same reasons that Wizard was Wizard before. He's going to be the new de facto best Anarch deck and possibly the best runner deck, period. Well, either Kim or Valencia rebirthing into Kim, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I could be wrong. If you've got an argument, go ahead and tell me, but I think my logic is fairly solid on this. So we'll see just what happens, but I'm definitely expecting this card to have an effect on the meta kind of like this.
That is the worst case of meta warp I've ever seen.
Is it contagious?
Absolutely not.
Well, anyway, let's move on with the rest of the pack. For criminal, we've got Corporate Grant. Grant in quotation marks, by the way. It is a current event. It is 1 to play, 3 influence, and it says this card is not trash until blah 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 blah. The first time you install a card each turn, the corp loses a credit. So this is, without question, the best criminal current since unscheduled maintenance, because it's the only criminal current since unscheduled maintenance. Yes, that's true. This is the second criminal current that's ever existed. It's not bad, though. The corp losing a credit every turn is definitely nice, but remember, that's assuming you have something to install every single turn. So I don't think this is something you can just toss into a deck. This has to go into a deck specifically designed to be able to use it. And I also think this is a card that if you play this, you play all 3. Like this, you don't just turn this into a deck because it's a cheap current like you do with Interdiction. I mean, you could, but I think if you want this in your deck, you need to play at minimum 2, probably all 3 copies, because you want it in effect as early and as often as possible. There's also the fact that you need to have a deck with a lot of things to install. So, like, in order for this to work, you have to install something every single turn. So there's a fair number of cheap cards in Criminal to install, but I think we all know where this is going. Geist decks are going to be the natural best home of Corporate Grant, because Geist decks are like 75% 0 to 1 cost cards that he wants to install. So I mean, deck slots in Geist decks are really, really tight, so it might be hard making room for 2 or 3 of these, but if you can make it work, I don't think anyone's going to argue with me that Geist is the best place for this to go. He's going to be able to get the most use out of this, especially because he runs things like Street Peddler, where you can even install stuff on the corpse turn. So yeah, like unquestionably this is best in Geist, but while you will have to go a little out of your way in your deck building to make use of this, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of months we figured out ways to make this viable in a couple other criminal IDs. And honestly, I would like to see that. I would honestly like to see other IDs besides Geist that can get reasonable use out of this, because if you can get this to work, it's actually pretty solid. Like if we're going to use Siphon as a baseline for what's a good econ denial card, Siphon made the Corp lose 5 credits. And in order to do that, you had to make a 6-will run on HQ. Okay? This, suppose you get this to go off 4 times. You make the Corp lose 4. The Corp lose like 3 or 4. Okay? That's not as much as a Siphon, but this cost you 1 credit to play. And 1 click. And you didn't have to make any runs. So yeah, even if you only get 3 or 4 dings out of this, a mini Siphon that is a current and can thus clear other currents, like Scarcity, and only costs you 1 credit and 1 click and no running, and you can put 3 of them in your deck, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. And like I just said, that whole thing about Friday chip making everybody use Operation Econ again, the more prevalent that burst econ is in the game, the more useful burst denial will be. Things like Siphon and Siphon-esque cards. Because so who knows? Who knows? Criminal denial, and don't forget, there's a couple other things that have been spoiled that I'm not going to talk about yet. But criminal denial could be coming back harder than we think. But yeah, keep an eye out for this card. After that, we've got No One Home, which is a virtual resource, 0 to play, 1 influence. The first time you would take any number of tags or suffer any amount of net damage each turn, you may trash No One Home to force the Corp to trace 0. If unsuccessful, the runner avoids any number of tags or prevents any amount of net damage. And this one, I'm not terribly concerned with this one. It's a trace 0, so now it's 1 influence. So in a deck that stacks Link, this could be useful for a single influence, but Criminal's really not the any of the Link stacking faction. So I guess maybe you could toss this in Sunny or something, but if you're going to spend 1 influence on this type of card in Sunny, why not play Caldera or Feedback Filter? So the fact that it's a trace 0, it's just a straight up money fight. So it's 2 credits and a click to remove a tag. So if you spend 5 credits on the trace to win the trace just to avoid paying 2 to remove a tag, it's come on. And if you want to prevent net damage, there's other cards prevent net damage. So I'm not terribly worried about this. However, there is one thing that it's good against, and that's hard-hitting news. So if the Corp pays a bunch of money into their hard-hitting news trace, and you have one of these out, you just let the hard-hitting news go off, and then you pop this, and then they have to redo the hard-hitting news trace over again. So this does make hard-hitting news a lot harder to land, because the Corp basically has to pay for their trace twice to get it to land. So it does have that. It does have that little niche use against hard-hitting news. But other than that, I'm really not seeing a whole lot of viability on this one. All right, then up for Shaper, we've got a new run event. This is Marathon. It's 1 to play. It's the full 5 influence, because if there's one thing this cycle is doing, it's putting 5 influence on cards. But anyway, make a run on a remote server. When the run ends, gain a click and add Marathon back to your grip instead of trashing it if the run was successful. You may not make another run on that server for the remainder of this turn. So if there's one thing that this pack in particular is doing, it has become increasingly clear that Michael Boggs has set his sights on removing acid spam from the meta. And while I personally do believe that acid spam has its place as an archetype in the game, I think we all know the community's general opinion on acid spam decks.
How do you feel about it?
So while this card isn't as crippling and widely usable as the Chimp combo is, uh, it does have one specific place, and that's in Mopus decks. Because what Marathon Mopus does is it says, as long as you have enough money, you can trash as many assets as you want for no clicks. Now, because you have to keep playing Marathon over and over again, it does cost you effectively one more credit to trash each thing, but you're a Mopus deck. So what Marathon Mopus says is you can just sit there and camp on your Mopus for a while, and when you're ready, you can just play Marathon, and for 0 clicks, you can just wipe the corp's entire board. Because you just have to pay the money. You don't have to pay any clicks. So you can just camp, you can just build up your pile of cash that you sit on with your magnum opus, and then when you're ready, you can take 0 clicks and just wipe the corp's entire board off the table. And even then, because you spent no clicks and because you're a Mopus deck, you can spend your turn clicking for 8. So yeah, if you thought Chimp wasn't enough to crush asset spam, any Mopus deck now has a kill switch for asset spam now, because you can literally just trash the corp's entire board and say take 8, and still say take 8 your turn. So now outside of that, I'm really not seeing any use for Marathon, because I don't see any other reason why you would want to run each remote server exactly one time in a single turn, so I don't see a lot of other uses for this, except maybe some super janky by any means combo, which would just be a similar thing, you just take damage instead of paying money. But yeah, this is another card meant to kick asset spam in the shins. Alright, after that we've got Gibahali. I guess that's how you say it. I can't pronounce a lot of the cards in this cycle. I'm just going to attempt to call that Gibahali, but anyway, it is a virtual resource. It is 2 to play, it's 1 influence, and it says trash it, break the last subroutine on the encountered piece of ice. So I think it's pretty obvious this is supposed to be the sibling card to Kongamato from the last pack, where that one was break the first subroutine, this one's break the last. So, anything that I said about Kongamato, just copy paste it to this one. Why this one is 1 credit more to play is because the last, if a piece of ice has multiple subs and one of them is end the run is always the last sub. So this one costs another credit to put down, because in case you just want to break the end the run and eat the other subs, it still allows you to get through the piece of ice, whereas Kongamato wouldn't let you do that. But still, between this and Kongamato and Grappling Hook, there is almost certainly a playable deck to be made out of them. I'm definitely going to try to build it. I've already been tinkering with Grappling Hook Cabanesa with Grappling Hooks and Kongamatos. This thrown in there might push it from being fun jank to actually being good. So between all these things and Grappling Hook, there could definitely be a fun deck to play, and I'm definitely going to try to find it. And of course, again, more trash can cards, more Geist cards. So. Alright, and last up for runners, we've got a new Sunny card. This is White Hat. It is 0 cost event, it is 5 influence, and it says play only if you made a successful run on a central server this turn. Force the corp to trace 3. If unsuccessful, reveal all cards in HQ. The runner may choose up to 2 of the revealed cards, shuffle those cards back into R&D. So this is not bad. This is not bad at all. I don't think it's crazy powerful, but the more I think about it, the more fun and useful ways there are to use this to mess with the corp. So it's trace 3, so you've got to be set up a little bit before you can use this, but this can be used a lot of creative ways. So obviously, first of all, you get to see what's in the corp's hand. And you can shuffle away anything that they need or anything that they're planning on using. So you can get rid of their money cards, you can get rid of their preemptive actions. If it's super strong against combo decks because you can get rid of their combo pieces, so that's really important. And on top of that, you can also, if you reveal their hand, and oh look, the Corp has agendas in their hand, especially if they're flooded, you can make them shuffle away the things that aren't agendas. So if they've got 5 cards in hand and 2 of them are agendas, you can shuffle away 2 things that aren't agendas, then go run their 3-card hand that's 2-card hand that has 2 agendas in it. So yeah, I don't think it's crazy strong, but there are definitely a lot of ways you can mess with the Corp with this, and I think Sunny players are really going to enjoy playing this card. Yeah, I think of the 3 mini factions, Sunny is probably the one closest enough to being competitively viable, so this definitely ekes her closer to that goal. Okay, then to start off the Corp cards, we've got COO Winda K4H1U3. I don't know if that's supposed to stand for something like David does, or if it's just more nonsense like Ash, but whatever. It's a Bioroid asset. It is 3 to res, 3 to trash, 4 influence. When your turn begins, you may trace X. If successful, do 1 brain damage and trash COO Winda, blah blah blah. If unsuccessful, place 1 power counter on it. X is the number of power counters on it. So this feels a lot like an HB version of Urban Renewal, but instead of 4 meat damage, you do 1 brain damage as this ticks down. Still, this is definitely worse than Urban Renewal. Like, it's unique, but that doesn't really matter. But the idea is you, A, have to keep this protected for a long period of time. B, every turn you get a gradually increasing trace. So trace 0, then trace 1, then trace 2, then trace 3. And when the runner, assuming the runner doesn't trash it, then eventually they'll have to give up and take 1 brain damage. That's not a very good payout for like how long you have to leave this and how long you have to keep it protected. Now I think the point is that the brain damage itself isn't actually the point of the payoff. The point is the brain damage that you eventually deal, as well as the money that you gradually drain the runner of as they keep fighting the trace. So even that still takes a couple turns, but if you end up draining the runner of like 6 or 7 credits and also do a brain damage, that's not bad. But again, if the runner just decides just eat the brain damage, then this card's kind of dead. So, and if they've got something like a feedback filter or a caldera, then this is totally dead. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that the incremental trace does seem like a fun mechanic. I don't think this is the best utilization of something like that. So you're probably not going to see very much of it. All right, after that, we've got our next new piece of Next Ice. So this is Next Sapphire. So we've got, it's a code gate, it's 3 influence, it's 4 to res, it's 2 strength, and it has 3 subs. Draw up to X cards, add up to X cards from archives to HQ, and shuffle up to X cards from HQ into R&D, and X, of course, is the number of res Next Ice. So you might say that this feels kind of like an HB equivalent of Miraju, because it's an ice with a Jackson type effect on it, but I would argue that it's a lot closer to Architect. So I would say much more so that this is more like a Next equivalent of Architect, because if this gets broken you don't get the effect, but this is a big fat whopping tempo effect for the Corp that the runner absolutely does not want to fire ever. Yeah, I think that's the best thing to equate this to. So, drawing a bunch of cards, filtering your hand, clearing yourself of agenda flood, getting recursion from archives. Yeah, this is. I'm not sure whether I would say that's stronger or weaker than Architect, but if this goes even with just 1 or 2 Next Iced res, this is still a pretty significant effect. So this is 2 strength, 3 subs is decent. But I think this is going to be something like if Next becomes an archetype again, which is, I don't know how likely that is, since we're losing all the cheap next dice and we're getting all this new, more expensive next dice that doesn't end the run. So I don't know how viable a next deck is going to be once all the old ones rotate out. But if it does become a thing, this will probably be a pretty solid threat, because this is, like I said, this is like the equivalent of Architect is the best thing I can compare it to. It's a giant tempo swing for the Corp that the runner absolutely does not want to fire at all, ever. Yeah, I think this is, if a next deck becomes viable, this will be a strong piece of ice, but until that happens, it's just kind of there. Alright, let's start off the tasty red cards with a new piece of ice. This is Anansi. It's a 4 influence sentry. It's 8 to res, it's 5 strength. It says, whenever an encounter with it ends, do 3 net damage unless the runner broke all subroutines on it. It has 3 subs. Look at the top 5 cards of R&D and arrange them in any order. Then you may draw 1 card. The runner may pay 2 credits to also draw 1 card. And do 1 net damage. And hot damn, we have a sentry version of DNA Tracker. And yeah, like that's what it's a sentry version of DNA Tracker. It's very much in line with that power level. It's just a different subtype of ice. And this is, man, this is a nasty one. So on face check with no breaker out, you get all the other effects, but the runner just has to eat 4 net damage. Like that's pretty mean. That's like face checking a Cortex lock with nothing installed. Like that could easily flatline some people. Outside of that, it also kind of feels like a much meaner version of Tapestry to me, because the idea behind this is that it's the subroutines themselves are not that scary, but the effect after you pass it is. So this is a big strength, difficult to break piece of ice that mostly just gives the Corp tempo. But if you don't break it, then you get kicked in the teeth. So yeah, that's the real threat, is the when you pass it thing. So unless you want to eat 4 net damage, you need to pay the money to break a 5 strength 3 sub piece of ice. So yeah, this kind of puts the runner in a lose-lose situation. Yeah, and the best part to me is that Hunting Grounds doesn't work on this, because it's after the encounter ends. It's not on the encounter. So I am like 95% sure that Hunting Grounds just doesn't work on this, and that makes me happy, because I main Jinteki and I'm tired of seeing Makoma Inus get blanked. But still, this is a very nasty, very threatening piece of ice. Yeah, it lets you arrange the top card of your deck. It lets you draw a card out of any of the top 5 cards of your deck. If it's on R&D, you can make them run into a trap after this if they don't jack out, but they probably will if they eat this into the face. It's a super nasty face check. It's a really expensive to break. Like this, it's DNA Tracker, but it's a sentry. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. It's super nasty. It's super threatening. It's a big investment to res, but it's worth every penny. So yeah, just some Pilana Jinteki Glacier is gonna just keep getting meaner and meaner. Look out for this card. You're gonna see it. I assure you. You might see some people having a hard time choosing between these, but yeah, this is going to be the big daddy sentry in town for a bit. And next up is Code Replicator. This is a upgrade. It is 2/2/2, 2 influence, 2 to res, 2 to trash. And it says when the runner passes a resed piece of ice protecting the server, you may trash Code Replicator to force the runner to approach that piece of ice again. So I actually like this a lot. This is a cute little card. I like it. What this feels like to me is something that I've been wondering about for a while. This is Jinteki's new upgrade nonsense card. Because first there was Caprice Nisei. Then there was Marcus Batty. And Caprice is gone. Marcus will rotate out the next time around. So I've been curious for a while if they're going to give us like some new Jinteki upgrade nonsense card. And this feels like it might be the next in line for that. Now, obviously, it's not as powerful as Caprice and Batty were, but let's be honest, as much as I love those cards, they are a little silly. However, it's still good, it's still solid, and because it's not unique, it doesn't get blanked by Rumor Mill, which is now legal again. So that's not bad. So when you pop this, you choose a piece of ice that the runner just passed, and you make them approach it again. Now, they can jack out. They aren't forced to break it again. They can jack out. So they're not forced to eat that ice, unless, of course, you have some kind of no jackout effect, like a Whirlpool or Labyrinthian Cerberus or whatever. So if you're running this, Whirlpool is probably not a bad idea. However, if the runner can't deal with that piece of ice, like you make them, they pass a DNA tracker, they don't have the money to break another DNA tracker, so you make them run into it again. If they jack out, then it's effectively end the run. So, which is basically the same thing as a Marcus Batty that ends the run. So if you've got a piece of ice beefy enough that they can't deal with it a second time, so they just jack out, it effectively ends the run. If it doesn't do that, then it's still, you can make them eat an expensive piece of ice twice, which still costs them a bunch of money. It's not the same as choosing any subroutine you want or just flat out ending it like Caprice and Batty, but this will definitely have some value. So if this is meant to be the next in line for Jinteki upgrade BS, like, it's not as strong as the previous two, but it's not bad. I could definitely see getting some value out of this, especially in like a Jinteki, a Pilana Glacier type deck. So this plus like Nisei Mark II, like there's definitely some value here. Then last for red, we've got Reverse Infection. This is a 0-cost, 1-influence operation, and it says choose one. Purge virus counters and trash one card from the top of the stack for every 3 virus counters removed, or gain 2 credits. So as you can see, this is like PU and Infiltration and Cyberdex Trial had just the most awkward threesome, and this is the result. So I think the clear intention behind this is something to keep virus decks in line. Like, it's 0 cost, it's 1 influence, so it's super easy to splash. Sure, we've got Macrophage and CVS already, but this feels like an extra card just to make sure excessive virus decks have a counter card that's easily splashable. Obviously, this is most powerful against when Freedom comes out and everyone's running, decks meant to have 500 virus counters on the table at any given time. This obviously ruins them pretty hard. Outside of that, it's still not bad against Amakua, but like other than Freedom and Amakua specifically, it doesn't have a ton of use. However, it is nicely designed in that it specifically deals with a certain threat, purging virus counters. It gives you a little extra edge on top of that with the mill, and then if it doesn't work, you just use it to gain 2 credits, which isn't very much value, but it's something. It's not completely dead. So you can still get at least a little bit out of it if you're not playing against a virus deck. But this is definitely a silver bullet card for virus counter stacking decks. So very glad to have it around. Anyway, next up is the new NBN Identity for this cycle. This is Asmari EdTech, Shaping the Future. It's a 40/15, and it says when your turn ends, not begins, ends, you may name a card type. Gain 2 credits the first time each turn the runner plays or installs a card that has the type you last named this way. And this is a really awkward but also pretty interesting identity ability. I mean, it gets you money. It's an ID that gets you money, so there's certainly reason to test out how useful it is. But this offers some real... I've played one game on JNet against someone testing out this deck, and it does force the runner into some really awkward decision choices, but it's also really hard to play a lot of the time because, well, you have to be able to accurately guess what the runner is trying to play. Now, obviously, there are cards that help make that guessing a whole lot easier, But what effectively, when this works the way you want it to, what this effectively does is push the runner into a lot of really undesirable choices that strangle their tempo. Because what happens is you say you say to the runner, it's like, okay, you can play your sure gamble, but you'll also give me 2 credits. Or you can put down your SMC, but you'll also give me 2 credits. So it makes the runner have to make a lot of really awkward and really annoying tempo choices, where if, like, assuming you can guess right every turn or nearly every turn, like very consistently, the runner either deliberately slows themselves down in order to try to not give you money, or the runner setting up also helps you set up. So it's definitely interesting, and this is there's a lot of cards that you can play to go along with this. I mean, there's targeted marketing. There's obviously the really obvious choice is just play 3 scarcity of resources, put down scarcity of resources, name event. So it's either give me money or pay a bunch of extra money for your resources. There's a bunch of cards coming up that help you look at the runner's hand so you can guess what they have. Like this is going to be one that's really tricky to play, but can have some potentially really good payoff. Again, it's an ID that gives you money, so if you can play this right, it's going to have value. Yeah, this is a really odd one. I think it's going to take a very particular type of player to be able to get solid use out of that, but it's definitely worth testing out. All right, then we finally get NBN's additional cost to steal 5/3. This is Degree Mill. It's 5/3. It's an additional cost to steal it. The runner must shuffle 2 installed cards back into the stack. And I actually got into a discussion with one of my Netrunner buddies not too long ago about what would like an NBN version of Obokata look like, because there's Obokata itself, there's Ikawa Project, there's that new Weiland 5/3 coming out. Like, what would an NBN 5/3 with an additional cost to steal it look like? And we had a bit of a difficult time settling on what that would be, but I can guarantee you it wouldn't look like this, because this is not good. This is it's just not. This is just not very good. That additional cost is not even slightly threatening. Now there are extremely niche situations where it might be useful, like if the runner only has like incredibly high value things installed, like consoles and breakers and nothing else for some reason, then it can be obnoxious. Or if they just don't have 2 things installed, like say at the very beginning of the game you get this in your opening hand and you try to score it out, but that still probably wouldn't be a very good idea, because you'd be making yourself totally broke for it. So, but yeah, it's way too easy for the runner to just shuffle in things they don't care about. So it's like, oh, here's my 0 cost copy of same old thing. Here's a SatCon. Here's a daily cast with 2 counters left on it. Like, they have to shuffle them back into their deck, not put them back in their hand or on top of their deck. So that's something, but it's way too easy for the runner to just shuffle back things that they don't care about. It's not nearly enough of a threat. Plus, there's also the fact that those other things all are and are a much more dangerous threat. Like if you don't have 4 cards in hand, you can't steal Obokata. Or if you try to steal it, you technically die first. Same thing with that new Weiland agenda. If it kills you, it kills you. That's the threat. If you can't pay the cost, you're dead. Or the Ikawa Project. If you don't have an extra click, then you just can't steal it. It's a lot easier to make the runner have no clicks left than it is to make the runner have no cards on their field left. So like when you get to game point, this is blank. That's the biggest weakness. This compared to its other 5/3 additional cost to steal equivalents is that this has 0 threat whatsoever when you're on game point. All the other 3 have something to be afraid of, even when you're at 4 points or more. This is literally useless when stealing it wins the game for the runner. So yeah, don't play this. Last up for yellow, we've got Personalized Portal. This is an asset. It's 2 influence. It's 3 to res, 3 to trash. When your turn begins, the runner draws 1 card, then you may gain 1 credit for every 2 cards in the runner's grip. Now, there is one real use for this card that I can think of, and that's to put it in PU decks. Which, especially since Wampoa just got restricted, so you can't put it in PU anymore, just replace it with this. You know, like put this in a PU deck to help mill out the runner. Outside of that, I'm really not seeing any use for it. Like, unless you can manage a deck like maybe in Spark or something, which again, that's going to be harder because of everyone blowing up all your assets, but unless you can manage a really hard econ denial strategy for the runner where you make them so broke they can't play anything and then put cards in their hand, then this isn't worth anything. But even then, like, that kind of strategy is way more effective against the Corp, who can get flooded with agendas, than it is against the runner, where you make them finally draw a card that they can play to get money and get out of the lock. You know, so yeah, this card has one purpose. It's for PU. I'm going to put it in my PU deck. You bet your ass I will. But outside of that, I don't see any use for this card. Alright, on to Weiland Bobayland, and what have we here? Armed Intimidation, a new 4/2. When you score it, the runner must either suffer 5 meat damage or take 2 tags. And well, shit, if this doesn't shake up Weiland agendas, I don't know what will. But, well, let's be clear here. The thing about Weiland 4/2s, well, 4/2s and agendas and whatever. Let's make this simple. The thing about Weiland 4/2s, specifically right now, is that in order for any Weiland 4/2 to be considered even remotely playable, it has to be able to compete with Oaktown Renovation. Because right now that is the de facto best / only playable Weiland 4/2. So any comparable agenda that gets designed or printed right now has to be done so with the knowledge that it will automatically and instantaneously be compared with Oaktown Renovation. And seeing as how universally useful and powerful it is to get money, which is what Oaktown does, any 4/2 that takes its place is going to have to do so, and that doesn't just get you money, is going to have to do something really, really useful to be considered playable. And this just might do it, because this is, rather than helping you like Oaktown does, this hurts the runner. So it takes away their tempo rather than giving you tempo. But at bare minimum, you score this, the runner gets 2 tags, and they have to spend their turn losing 2 clicks and 4 credits, which even that's pretty nice, but there's definitely a lot more nasty things you can do with this. One thing that definitely is of note is that this agenda will make you change your scoring patterns a lot, rather than the typical install, advance it once, and then do something else. This is a 4/2 that you will want to install advance as much as possible, because when you do that, your next turn you can advance, score it, and then spend your last click, doing anything that you can do when the runner is tagged, like blowing up a resource or closed accounting them, all-seeing-eyeing them, using any other number of tag punishment cards that exist now or will ever get printed, because the vast majority of the time the runner is going to take the 2 tags. Nobody wants to take 5 meat damage unless they absolutely have to. So then most of the time people aren't even going to have 5 cards in hand to take that damage. So yeah. And you know what else likes to get install advanced a whole lot? NGO front. So yeah, there is absolutely a Weiland deck that waiting to be built with this and NGO front and closed accounts and whatever else you can put in it. Probably Argus. I'm definitely going to try to revive my Argus deck with this. This is some oomph to try to put Weiland back on the map, and it just might be enough. I mean, Oaktown's still a really good choice to go with, and if you were playing a super heavy rush deck, you might still want to go with Oaktown. But yeah, this is a powerful, very aggressive, very offensive agenda that will absolutely has the capacity to be practically its own win condition. So yeah, there's definitely some nonsense you can do with this. There's definitely going to be decks built around this, and I'm kind of scared, but also kind of excited, because I don't want to have to deal with this, but I also really want to play it. It's that feeling, you know. So yeah, this is definitely something Weiland players are really going to love, and I'm a fan. I definitely like it, so I'm looking forward to seeing. No, 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 don't, no, no, no! Well, anyway, here's the next Weiland card. It's a new current, Death and Taxes. It's also a transaction. It's 3 influence, 2 to play. Whenever the runner installs a card or trashes an installed card, you may gain a credit. So this is kind of like the opposite of Corporate Grant, basically. And the trigger's not bad. It's not a terrible card. I feel like it's supposed to be a replacement for paywall implementation, which is very similar to this. It's definitely not bad, but 2 to play for a current is kind of obnoxious, and you know, if you play this later in the game, it's probably not going to pay out nearly as well. And it's really the 2 to play that bugs me. Like if this was 0 to play, like paywall implementation is, it'd be a lot better. Instead of a much higher chance of giving you a good profit out of it. It is still whenever, not the first time per turn. So if you can see this early against certain decks like Haley or Geist, it'll absolutely pay out in spades. But for the time being, you're probably better off with scarcity or paywall implementation. Still not bad. Alright, after that we've got Trojan Horse, which is a new operation. It's 3 influence, it's 1 to play, and it says play only if the runner accessed at least 1 card during his or her last turn. Trace 4. If successful, trash an installed program with an install cost equal to or less than the amount by which your trace strength exceeded the runner's link strength. So I'll be honest with you, this card almost gave me a damn heart attack when it was first spoiled, until I got to that last part where it says, you know, by how much your trace beat their link. Because if that wasn't there, this card would be broken. But it is there, so we're cool. Now, this is still a very, very tempting card to play, especially in something like Scorpios. Because the runner having accessed anything during their last turn pretty much means if the runner made a run last turn. You know, it's 99% of the time it means if the runner made a run last turn. So that's an incredibly easy, okay, successful run, but still really easy trigger condition. Trace 4. 4 is a pretty high starting trace, and you get to trash a program, so that's pretty dang valuable. So like, this is definitely Scorpio's fodder, but I don't think this is going to be as strong as people might think it is at first, because of that last thing where you have to win by so much. So first of all, Link obviously makes this weaker, yeah, but that's true for any trace. But the issue is that if you want to get rid of something that's important, most of the time you're going to have to win that trace by a lot. And there's also the fact that the runner doesn't have to, in order to fight this, the runner doesn't have to actually beat the trace. It just has to make the gap between their trace and yours small enough that you can't blow up the thing you want. So say you want to, say you're playing this in Scorpios and you want to get rid of their paperclip. That's probably a very common scenario that this card will be used in. So let's say you're trying to kill a paperclip. Okay, you have to pay 1 to play this. You start at trace 4, that's great. But you have to win the trace by 4 in order to be able to beat their paperclip. So that means if the runner pays 4, you then have to spend 4 more into the trace. So you spent 5 to play this, because you had to trace 8 and the 1 to play it. So yeah, that means again that if you're trying to kill their paperclip, the runner doesn't have to beat the trace. They just have to they only have to boost it enough that the gap between your link and their link is 3, not 4. So now obviously there's different stuff going on. How useful this is depends a lot on the exact board state, because if they have something super cheap on the board, like if you're against Atom with RNG key, or if they're running NT, or it's something that's like 1 or 2 cost to blow up, this certainly could still have some really easy value. Blow up in those combination decks that are all running Origami. You can blow up an Origami. You can blow up an SMC. You can kill a Tapworm. There's a decent number of cheap stuff you can put on this. So we'll see. I still think this is going to go in Scorpios way more than anything else. I think that's pretty obvious, just because in general program trashing outside of Scorpios is not very good right now. But still, this does have the potential to be useful. Again, the counterplay of not having to actually win the trace in order to basically defeat the card does hold it back. But if you've got a big enough money advantage, you can definitely abuse this card. So I don't know. We'll see. I think you're going to see a couple of Scorpios decks trying this out. We'll find out exactly how useful it is. So, and at the very end of the pack, we've got Tecnico. It's unique. It's an asset. It's 2 to res, 2 to trash. And it says the install cost of each program, piece of hardware, and virtual resource is increased by 1. Whenever the runner installs a program, piece of hardware, or virtual resource, you may gain 1 credit. And not gonna lie, I can feel my sphincter clenching just reading that card. I've had about enough of my own frustrations with scarcity of resources, and this is like an asset version of scarcity of resources. So I think every cruel, heartless corp player is going to cram 3 of this and 3 scarcity into the same deck. And if they can get them both early on, it's going to drive us all insane. But, well, to be honest, it is an asset. It is only 2 to trash, so it's a lot easier to get rid of than scarcity. So as much as my heart tells me to be terrified of this card because of, turn 1 or 2 this and scarcity out on the board, my head tells me that it's probably not going to see that much play because it's only 2 to trash. You have to keep it protected all the time because it is an asset, and also just, well, deck slots. So I don't know. It's probably not actually that good, but I still have a hard time not being scared and angry at this card. Just ugh. All right, and that was Council of the Crest, and well, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the game in this particular moment. We got this very influential pack with a lot of very key cards in it that I think are going to make some noticeable swings in the meta. And we also just got the MWL, the new MWL, just a few days before this, with some major things like Rumor Mill being a card again. So, yeah. There's a lot of things that have been thrown up in the air right now, and I guess we're just going to wait and see where they land. But I'm definitely calling it right now that this pack is going to be the turning point for the meta. There's going to be a lot of significant changes in what's good and what's not, and what plays where and when and why from this point on. So we all got some testing to do. Let's get to it. Thank you and good night.